to the TSIA2 ELAR Reading Test Prep from Star Center Tutoring Services at Lone Star College, Montgomery. The TSIA2 Texas Success Initiative Assessment 2 is a college readiness test designed to place you into the most appropriate courses. The TSIA2 is divided into three main sections: Math, ELAR, and an essay. The Math section is divided into 20 multiple-choice questions covering areas in quantitative reasoning, algebraic reasoning, geometric and spatial reasoning, and probabilistic reasoning. The ELAR section, English, Languages, Arts, and Reading, is 30 multiple-choice questions that are reading-focused and writing-focused. In the past, this section was divided into two separate tests, reading and writing. The essay test requires you to write a 300 to 600 word essay in response to one randomly selected prompt. The TSIA2 is scored immediately, so what score do you need to place into English 1301? The ELAR requires a score in the range between 945 and 990 on the College Readiness Classification Test, and you need to have a score of at least a 5 on the essay test. If you score below 945 on the CRC, you'll need an ELAR diagnostic test score of a 5 or a 6 with an essay test score of a 5 or higher. What can you expect? The TSIA2 is a placement test. It is not pass-fail. The scores you receive will be used to assist in determining the most appropriate course at this time. The multiple-choice tests are adaptive. The more you get right, the harder it will get. You cannot skip a question or go back to change an answer. Be sure that the answer that you've chosen is the one that you were trying to choose. Read each question carefully before proceeding to the next question. Tips for computer-based testing. Read each question twice, slowly. 3 readings are good for word problems. Read the first time to get a feel for the problem. Read the second time to get a grasp on what information is provided and what information you need to answer. Read the third time to check that what you select is what the question is asking. Use the multiple choice answers to guide your strategies. Reread each passage until you understand it. Be sure you answer what is asked. Check to see if the answer is reasonable, and ask which answer has the most support and evidence. Questions to ask before reading a passage. On the surface, ask, what is the passage about? What is the main idea or position? How are details used for support? And how are keywords used? On a deeper, closer reading, what is the purpose for writing the passage? What are the presuppositions or background beliefs listed in the passage? What is implied or below the surface, and what is the tone or the emotion of the passage? Here are some additional resources that you may find useful. The second one is particularly helpful because College Board are the people who write and produce the TSIA2. They have designed their own sample test that you can go through and test yourself. If you go down to that second one, College Board also has a series of learning resources that you can use. They also have a study app that is included. I highly advise you to go ahead and go in there and start using that because it'll allow you to test your knowledge and it's adaptive. And then the last one just provides some additional study guides for your use. Sample questions and passages. The reading placement test measures understanding of the reading passages. The test also measures the ability to recognize and understand main ideas and supporting details, implications and unstated ideas, evidence and rhetorical devices, the meaning of words in context, and elements of literature. The questions will ask you to read a statement, passage, or pair of passages, and then choose the best answer to the question based on what is stated or implied in the passage or passages. We're now going to go over a brief review of terms and definitions. Some of these terms will be used in the exam. Some will just make it easier for you to reason the answer. Reading comprehension, the ability to understand what is read, applying and adding the information to what the reader already knows. Implied, This is suggested but not directly expressed. Here's our example. Hub yelled at the other driver. This implies that Hub is angry. Inference. This is a conclusion reached on the basis of evidence and reasoning. It's reading between the lines and making an educated guess based on the information provided. Here's our example. Nana's car is in the driveway. You could infer that Nana is there even though it doesn't explicitly state that she is. Explicit. Clearly stated in detail. Nana is at home. This lets us know exactly where Nana is. Stated. Clearly expressed or identified specifically. Duke is a bulldog. This clearly identifies what type of dog Duke is. Compare and contrast. Reading two or more passages, finding what is similar and what is different between the passages. Meaning, what a word represents or stands for in a language. Focus refers to the strategies used to narrow the topic and identify the purpose of writing. Main point, the central theme or point, providing a reason or explanation for the essay. Thesis presents the reader with the main point, focus of the passage, and what concept or idea will be supported and proven throughout the essay. Author's craft is the art of the writing. It is the intentional use of writing tools to create a certain effect in writing, including stylistic devices, text structure, voice and tone, imagery and details, sentence structure, sentence fluency, sound, and dialogue. Figurative language are phrases that go beyond the literal meaning. They're used to give a passage or description a more creative sense of variety. The team needed an out-of-the-box thinker. This isn't literally out of the box, but a non-traditional thinker. Simile, a figure of speech comparing one kind of thing with another different kind of thing, using the word as or like for the comparison. Diego is clever as a fox. This compares Diego's intelligence to that of a fox. We're not saying Diego is literally a fox, merely that his intelligence is like that of a fox. A metaphor is a figure of speech that describes something in a way that is not literally true, using symbolism, a way of describing something using word pictures. The sunlight danced across the lake. This describes the movement of the sunlight. We're not saying that the sunlight is literally dancing, we're describing the movement. Supporting details provide specific information, evidence, facts, graphs, quotes, and examples to support and prove the topic, main idea, and thesis. Literary, that is fiction text, and informational, nonfiction text analysis. It examines the structure, credibility, literary devices, word choices, or writing structures the author uses within the work. Vocabulary, word choice, and word placement. This is interpreting the meaning of words and phrases while decoding and recognizing words in context. Diction refers to the choice of words in a particular situation, while syntax determines how the chosen words are used to form a sentence. Synthesis combines information, ideas, and findings from various sources, finding the main connections and differences, often pairing to argumentative passages. We're now going to be going over a series of TSIA2 sample questions. Read the statement or passage and then choose the best answer to the question. Answer the question on the basis of what is stated or implied in the statement or passage. Feel free to pause the video at any time so you can reread a passage. In June 2017, the Texas legislature changed the way higher education addresses students who do not test into college-ready courses. For years, students who did not test into Math 1314 College Algebra or English 1301 Comp and Rhetoric were required to take anywhere from 1 to a staggering 23 remedial non-credit courses. However, a large number of these students never earned a degree or even completed the remedial course load. House Bill 2223 eliminated the required developmental courses and instead introduced dual enrollment co-requisites, that allowed students to take college-ready courses concurrently with the course that would target student weakness. When you are approaching the questions, you want to read it slowly and see if any of the proposed answers can be crossed off. Make sure that you're going back and referring to the passage as many times as you need to. According to the passage, House Bill 2223, A, changed higher education requirements, B, reduced the number of required developmental courses, C, occurred once a month, or D, affected all higher education nationally. As you go through and start trying to cross off as many of the extra answers as you can, you probably notice that C and D are fairly easy to cross off because nowhere in the passage does it say they're meeting monthly, and it's not talking about nationally, we're only looking at Texas. If we go back and read that passage, we're going to find the most support for A. Even though it does reduce the number of required developmental courses, the biggest impact and the most support is how it changed higher education requirements. This next question is still about our first passage. The purpose of the passage is to A, analyze, B, criticize, C, persuade, or D, inform. As we go back through our passage and we're looking, our passage isn't really analyzing anything, so you can cross that off. It's not criticizing either. It's not trying to persuade us to one point of view or the other. It's actually trying to inform us on what's happening. So D is our correct answer. Just try to become familiar with crossing off as many of these answers as you possibly can. Here's our next passage. World War II expanded the role of women in the workforce. In the past, women had limited opportunities for employment outside of the home. Nevertheless, women moved into the workforce, taking positions that had previously been filled by their male counterparts because every available man was needed on the battlefield. Embracing their new independence, women were resistant to resuming the traditional and restrictive roles of the past after the men came home from war. The main idea of the passage is that A, jobs were filled by women so that men could fight in the war, B, World War II led to the women's rights movement in the U.S., C, World War II changed women's role in society, or D, women are best suited to working in the home. As you're going back through and rereading your passage, look carefully for key words that will help support any of the answers. Especially in these shorter passages, a lot of times you're going to find a lot of the information in the first and last sentences. Also, beware of any answers that may have a bias to them. So as you're going through and reasoning the answers, you may have found that D is a very biased statement, and you can cross that off. We can also cross B off because we're not talking about the civil rights movement at all, so you can cross that one off. That leaves us with A and C. Jobs were filled by women so that men could fight in the war, and World War II changed women's roles in society. So if we go back and read that passage, we're going to find that we have the most support for C. However, as you're going through with multiple choice questions, it's really better if you go with your first gut instinct because it's better that you just get one wrong than to start second guessing yourself as you go along. On to our next passage. Remember to pause this video at any time if you need to reread a section or look at a question. Wolverines, despite the name, are not related to wolves. They are actually more closely related to bears. Wolverines are not pack animals, instead preferring to roam prodigious territories in cold climates. Their individual territories often cover hundreds of square miles. In the passage above, what does prodigious mean? A, ominous, B, marvelous, C, strange, or D, enormous. Anytime you are asked to find the meaning of a word, if you are unfamiliar with that word, you want to look at how the word is used within the sentence. Look for any key terms or words that are used in other sentences and look at how they're used there. So you're being asked for the meaning of prodigious. Our sentence is wolverines are not pack animals, instead preferring to roam prodigious territories in cold climates. So we're looking at prodigious territories. If we look at our next sentence, their individual territories often cover hundreds of square miles. Prodigious in this case is used as an adjective in which we are modifying or giving additional information to the noun territories. If we look in our second sentence, or that last sentence, the individual territories often cover hundreds of square miles. So we're looking for a word that's going to describe size. So in our next slide, we're going to be looking for any word that's going to be talking about size. So as we mentioned in the passage above, what does prodigious mean? If you were going through and you were able to eliminate all of them and got to D, enormous, that's the correct answer because that's the only one of these words that's talking about the size of a territory. How color is perceived is an interesting conundrum. Black and white are complete opposites on the color spectrum. Yet, there is still disagreement on where each color falls in the spectrum. Scientists argue that black is the absence of light and white is a combination of all colors. In contrast, artists believe that black is a combination of all colors and that white is the absence of color. Each person's perception of color is dictated by need and experience. What does the author imply about color perception? A. Scientists and artists disagree on the definition of black and white. B. Color is defined by each individual and is more complex than black and white. C. It has been the subject of numerous books. Or D. It is not as well known as it should be. So once again, we have our question. What does the author imply about color perception? Were you able to cross off any of these? C and D are inserting information that wasn't covered or it's just kind of vague. If we look at A and B, B is the one that has the most support. So B is our correct answer. The tone of the passage is A, persuasive, B, expressive, C, wrathful, or D, thoughtful. If you're going through and crossing these off, you should have been able to cross off the first three because it's not a persuasive passage. It's not using figurative language to express or vividly describe anything. It's not writing in an angry manner. It's just more thoughtful and insightful. So D is our correct answer. Now we have our large passage. You're going to have several short passages and several long passages. With the long passages, it's going to be especially important that you're going back through and rereading the passage as many times as you need to. Remember, you can pause the video. America has often been referred to as a melting pot, indicating the melding of cultures, ethnicities, and nationalities. Just as America represents this unique amalgamation of diverse cultures and peoples, so too does the English language. As the language with the most words, English contains an estimated vocabulary of nearly 1 million words. Although it is only the third most widely spoken language in the world, English has been influenced by many other languages. English is formally acknowledged as a Germanic language, but a majority of English is based on a wide variety of languages, especially Latin. For example, the sentence, "Knights wore suits of armor, but modern soldiers wear khakis and Kevlar," contains derivatives from Dutch, Norse, French, Urdu, Spanish, Latin, Proto-Germanic, and Anglo-Saxon. English started as a pidgin language, a form of trade tongue or lingua franca, which allowed people of different languages to communicate using a basic version of a language or languages. It later developed into a fully formed Creole, a language that is developed from a pidgin, drawing on other languages to become a fully evolved language. Over time, It transformed into the modern tongue that is used today. A living language, English is much like the U.S., adopting the best each nation or language has to offer and making it a part of itself. Since the 11th century, English has slowly evolved into one of the most complex spoken languages because of its global influences. English is like a delicious stew, containing everything but the kitchen sink. In the last paragraph, the simile, like a delicious stew, primarily A, emphasizes the inclusion of many words into English from different languages. B, suggests that the growth of a language is an organic process. C, suggests that the author acquired cultured taste fairly early in life. Or D, emphasizes that the best part of English is its variety. Once again, we have our question. In the last paragraph, the simile, like a delicious stew, primarily A, emphasizes the inclusion of many words into English from different languages. B, suggests that the growth of a language is an organic process. C, suggests that the author acquired cultured taste fairly early in life. Or D, emphasizes that the best part of English is its variety. Our sentence was, English is like a delicious stew containing everything but the kitchen sink. As you go through, you should have been able to cross off the first three, leaving you with D. Emphasizes that the best part of English is its variety as our correct answer. In sentence 2, the word amalgamation is closest in meaning to A, spreading, B, blending, C, compacting, or D, composing. Our sentence is, just as America represents this unique amalgamation of diverse cultures and peoples, so too does the English language. Anytime you're given a question like this where we're asking what the closest meaning is, if you don't already immediately know the answer, you're going to take each of these proposed answers and replace the word amalgamation and drop it in the sentence. You'll be reading it at least 4 times. Just as America represents this unique spreading of diverse cultures and peoples, so too does the English language. Just as America represents this unique blending of diverse cultures and peoples, so too does the English language. Just as America represents this unique compacting of diverse cultures and peoples, so too does the English language. And just as America represents this unique composting of diverse cultures and peoples, so too does the English language. Of these proposed answers, the only one that makes sense and sticks to the closest meaning is B, blending. Which of the following lines from the passage best demonstrates how the different languages are incorporated into one sentence? A, knights wore suits of armor, but modern soldiers wear khakis and Kevlar. B, English contains an estimated vocabulary of nearly 1 million words. C, America represents this unique amalgamation of diverse cultures and peoples. Or D, English is much like the U.S., adopting the best each nation or language has to offer and making it a part of itself. Anytime you're given a question where they are taking snippets from the passage, you want to make sure that you go back and look at the individual sentences so you get an entire picture of it. So A, sentence 6. For example, the sentence knights wore suits of armor, but modern soldiers wear khakis and Kevlar contains derivatives from Dutch, Norse, French, Urdu, Spanish, Latin, Proto-Germanic, and Anglo-Saxon. B, sentence 3. As the language with the most words, English contains an estimated vocabulary of nearly 1 million words. C, sentence 2. Just as America represents this unique amalgamation of diverse cultures and peoples, so too does the English language. And D, sentence 10. A living language, English is much like the U.S., adopting the best each nation or language has to offer and making it a part of itself. So based on our reading, which of the following lines from the passage best demonstrates how the different languages are incorporated into one sentence? If you were paying close attention, if you read the entire sentence of the first answer, A, it tells you that knights wore suits of armor, but modern soldiers wear khakis and Kevlar, and tells you how each of those words incorporates different languages. So it's one of our more literal questions. So A is our correct answer. The passage as a whole implies that A, some languages are dead, B, language is fluid, C, English continues to evolve, or D, English is the most sophisticated language in history. As you're going through these, be careful and watch out for any answers that might be biased, such as D, which we can cross off. If we're looking through, the answer that has the most support is C, English continues to evolve. We will now look at a pair of passages and will be asked a series of questions that will allow us to compare and contrast. Passage 1. Baseball has long been considered America's pastime. It is more than a game. Diverse groups of people join to watch, play, cheer, and debate. It is a sport with one of the longest player shelf lives. Children as young as 4 can play and can continue as long as they are physically able, well into the later years of their adult lives. For a short time, people from all backgrounds can join together and become part of a culture that transcends age, sex, nationality, ethnicity, and creed. From the youngest t-ball player to the girls' softball team to the oldest player, baseball is the sport that America plays together. Passage 2. While America's pastime may be baseball, its favorite spectator sport is football. Every year, millions of people gather to watch this highly competitive, exciting, and brutal game. It is a time where families, friends, and strangers put aside their differences and join together to avidly cheer for their favorite team's successes while heckling the other team's failures. Football creates a community of separate people united in the common goal of enjoying each other's company in the name of their favorite team. Football is not only an important part of American culture, it is an American tradition. When you come across compare and contrast passages, there's a very useful tool called a T diagram. Just go ahead and draw a large T on your scratch paper, and you can get this from your proctors. On one side, you're going to label it Passage 1, and you want to go ahead and name it by topic, and then you'll have Passage 2 on the other. Then anytime you come across something and it says Passage 1, you'll just replace it with its title. So in this case, we have baseball and football. You're going to go through those two passages, and you're going to pull keywords and main points from those passages so that when you're going back through and you're comparing and contrasting them, you have your information already written. So I went ahead and put some of those down for you to make it a little easier as we're going through. So for baseball, we have America's pastime. Everyone plays. It's diverse. It has a long shelf life. For football, we have it's a spectator sport. It's competitive. It's united in common ground, and it's an American tradition. The author of Passage 2 most likely would say that the argument expressed in Passage 1 is A, baseball is for playing together, football is for experiencing together. B, baseball is not as competitive or professional as football. C, practicing good sportsmanship and building relationships should be the goal of every sport. Or D, baseball is a sport for the whole family to play and enjoy. So we have our question. The author of Passage 2 most likely would say that the argument expressed in passage 1 is one of these following. So we want to carefully look at our question and find out what we're being asked. So the author of passage 2, that's football, most likely would say that the argument expressed in passage 1, baseball, is one of these following. So if you're looking at it very closely, you'll notice that we're not actually being asked for a comparison. We're being asked for an opinion. So any of these questions that we have that offers us a comparison between the two passages, we can cross them off. So that crosses off the first two. C doesn't really talk about any information that was covered, and that leaves us with D. Baseball is a sport for the whole family to play and enjoy. According to the passages, how do the two sports differ? A. One has more versatile applications for all who are involved, whereas the other has a more limited target audience. B. Passage 1 focuses on the fellowship that is developed through the game. Passage 2 focuses on the diversity that is found in the game. C. One equalizes the playing field, and the other is a fiercely competitive game for spectators. Or D. Baseball is a ploy to enforce equality. Football is a Neanderthal display of the survival of the fittest. We will now look at a pair of passages and will be asked a series of questions that will allow us to compare and contrast. Passage 1. Baseball has long been considered America's pastime. It is more than a game. Diverse groups of people join to watch, play, cheer, and debate. It is a sport with one of the longest player shelf lives. Children as young as 4 can play and can continue as long as they are physically able, well into the later years of their adult lives. For a short time, people from all backgrounds can join together and become part of a culture that transcends age, sex, nationality, ethnicity, and creed. From the youngest t-ball player to the girls' softball team to the oldest player, baseball is the sport that America plays together. So according to the passages, how do the two sports differ? Look at what we're being asked. We're being asked to contrast our two passages. And remember, as we're reading through, if it has passage 1 listed in passage 2, you're going to replace that with baseball and football. So if we're going through and we look at A, one has a more versatile applications for all who are involved, whereas the other is a more limited target audience. In neither of the passage does it talk about it having a more limited target audience. We can cross that one off. If we look at B, passage 1, that's going to be baseball, focuses on the fellowship that is developed through the game. Passage 2, that's football, focuses on the diversity that is found in the game. If you are looking closely at your passages in our T diagram, you'll notice that they actually mix those two passages up. So when they're talking about passage 1, that's actually going to be football. And when they're talking about passage 2, they're actually talking about baseball. We can cross D off because it is very biased. So that leaves us with C. One equalizes the playing field and the other is a fiercely competitive game for spectators, and we actually have key words for both of those to support it. So C is our correct answer. We're now going to be looking at a literary passage. Every few weeks she would shut herself up in her room, put on her scribbling suit, and fall into a vortex, as she expressed it, writing away at her novel with all her heart and soul, for till that was finished she could find no peace. Her scribbling suit consisted of a black woolen pinafore on which she could wipe her pen at will, and a cap of the same material, adorned with a cheerful red bow, into which she bundled her hair when the decks were cleared for action. This cap was a beacon to the inquiring eyes of her family, who during these periods kept their distance, merely popping in their heads semi-occasionally to ask with interest, "Does genius burn, Joe?" They did not always venture even to ask this question, but took an observation of the cap and judged accordingly. If this expressive article of dress was drawn low upon the forehead, it was a sign that hard work was going on. In exciting moments, it was pushed rakishly askew, and when despair seized the author, it was plucked wholly off and cast upon the floor. At such times the intruder silently withdrew, and not until the red bow was seen gaily erect upon the gifted brow did anyone dare address Jo. This passage is an excerpt from Louisa May Alcott's Little Women. In context, what does the expression fall into a vortex most nearly mean? A. Deep tunnel, B. Writing trance, C. Dream, or D. Picked up by a tornado? So, in context, what does the expression fall into a vortex most nearly mean? If you go back through and reread the passage, you'll notice that the only one of these that really seems to make any sense is B, a writing trance. And that is the correct answer. What is the main idea of this passage? A. Jo was very serious about her writing. B. Jo possessed a unique perspective of what a writer should wear. C. Jo's writing was an all-consuming endeavor. Or D. Jo had a ritual way of dressing when she wrote, and her mood dictated how her hat was worn. So what is the main idea of this passage? If you read very carefully, you should have seen that there's an underlining idea that keeps popping up in almost every single sentence. Although Jo is serious about her writing, it's really focusing on something else. She did possess a unique perspective on what a writer should wear, and her writing did seem to be an all-consuming endeavor. But if you look very closely at the passage, it's focusing on Jo's ritual way of dressing when she wrote and how her mood dictated how her hat was worn. It's in almost every single sentence. So our correct answer is D. Star Center Resources. For additional information about the Star Center resources, visit mavericksresearch.lonestar.edu. You'll be able to learn all about the different services available for both in-person and online students. Thank you for attending our workshop.